Champions aren't supposed to fall. Not like this. But in the UFC, it doesn't matter how dominant you are. One wrong move, one wild punch, and history changes in seconds. Over the years, we've seen legends fall, icons silenced, and underdogs rise from complete obscurity to world champions. From a no-name fighter finishing an unbeaten star in under 2 minutes, to another sending the pound-for-pound king to the Shadow Realm. These are the most unbelievable title upsets in UFC history. 7. Strickland vs Adesanya. And to kick things off, we're starting with a championship fight upset where it wasn't just the result that shocked everyone. It was the dominant fashion in which this fighter dismantled the champion that made waves. Going into UFC 293, Israel Adesanya was the heavy favorite. He had just reclaimed his middleweight title with a sizzling knockout of Alex Pereira and was set on beginning a dominant second reign as champion. On the other hand, Sean Strickland was an unexpected challenger, ranked 5th in the division, 2-2 in his last 4, and widely counted out.
But you guys, I'm gonna go have a fucking war for you guys, and I'm gonna fucking lose some brain cells for you fucking guys. Thank you for fucking showing me all the love. Thank you.
Most people thought Adesanya would walk through him, but nobody saw what was coming. As the fight started, Strickland wasted no time setting the tone. He smothered every attack, deflected nearly everything Adesanya threw, and held him to just 34% accuracy on significant strikes. But he also landed clean shots and dominated the exchanges. And by the time it was over, Strickland had outfought the champion from start to finish, winning 4 of 5 rounds and taking the belt by unanimous decision 49-46. 6. Dillashaw vs Barao. But next up at number 6, we've got an upset from UFC 173, TJ Dillashaw vs Renan Barao. And while there's no such thing as an unbeatable fighter, Barao might have been the closest thing to it. Coming in, he hadn't lost in 9 years, riding a ridiculous 33-fight unbeaten streak, one of the best runs in UFC history. Meanwhile, TJ Dillashaw wasn't even supposed to be there. The title shot was meant for #1 contender Rafael Assunção, but after an injury, the call went to the young underdog from California, and nobody gave him a real chance as sportsbooks had Barao as a 9-1 favorite. But once the bell rang, everything changed as Dillashaw stunned Barao in the first round and never looked back. He pieced him up for 5 straight rounds, landing clean, crisp combinations until a brutal 5th round head kick and barrage of punches ended it. Dillashaw didn't just win the belt, he dismantled one of the most dominant champions ever, taking home Fight of the Night, Performance of the Night, and one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. 5. Bisping vs Rockhold. But coming in at number 5, we've got Michael Bisping vs Luke Rockhold at UFC 199. Before this fight, Bisping had spent 12 long years climbing the UFC middleweight ranks. Always close, but never quite there. Then in 2016, fate finally gave him his shot. After Chris Weidman pulled out with an injury, Bisping stepped in on just 17 days' notice to fight the reigning champion Luke Rockhold.
He obviously didn't understand what happened last time. It's time to penetrate that thick skull and make him realize his true destiny. That's behind the desk.
The odds were completely lopsided, as Rockhold had already submitted Bisping 2 years earlier and was expected to run through him again, as everyone thought this was just another routine defense. But when the fight started, that was not the case. And at a point, Bisping caught Rockhold clean with a left hook, then poured on with a flurry of punches that sent the champion crashing to the canvas. The referee stepped in, and just like that, 12 years of waiting turned into one of the most shocking title victories in UFC history. 4. Edwards vs Usman 2. But as crazy as that was, next up at number 4 is Leon Edwards vs Kamaru Usman 2 for the welterweight title at UFC 278. Coming into this fight, Edwards was on a 9-fight win streak, unbeaten since 2015, and the last man to beat him just happened to be Kamaru Usman. Now, Usman wasn't just the champion. He was the champion riding a 15-fight unbeaten streak, holding the #1 pound-for-pound spot in the world and living up to his name as the Nigerian Nightmare. When the fight started, Edwards stunned the crowd by taking Usman down for the first time in his UFC career. But from there, Usman took over, landing heavy strikes, dominating rounds 2 through 4, and cruising toward another dominant title defense. With less than a minute left in the 5th, Usman was seconds away from a unanimous decision victory. Then it happened, as Edwards threw a picture-perfect left high kick, sending the champion flat out to the canvas. Just like that, Leon Edwards became the new welterweight king, delivering one of the most iconic title knockouts in UFC history. 3. Pena versus Nunes. Now entering our top 3, next up is Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes at UFC 269 in 2021. Going into this fight, Amanda Nunes hadn't lost since 2014. She'd already defeated legends like Ronda Rousey, Valentina Shevchenko, and Chris Cyborg, and was widely considered the greatest female fighter in UFC history. Everyone expected her to steamroll Pena, who had quietly worked her way to a title shot after nearly 8 years in the promotion. Most people didn't believe Pena had what it took to hang with the champ, but she didn't care. When the cage door closed, she fought with pure confidence and executed her game plan perfectly. Pena let Nunes burn her energy early, then turned the fight into a slugfest in the second round, landing sharp counter shots that rocked the champion.
Goodness. Juliana Pena is making this war in the She's doing exactly what she said she was going to do.
Moments later, she took Nunes to the mat, secured a rear naked choke, and forced her to tap out to pull off one of the biggest upsets in UFC history, ending the reign of a woman many thought was untouchable. 2. Serra versus GSP. But as crazy as that was, number 2 might just be the most shocking upset of all time. Back in 2007 at UFC 69, the unlikeliest of challengers Matt Serra stepped into the octagon against a man many considered the greatest fighter on the planet, Georges St-Pierre. Serra had earned his shot by winning the Ultimate Fighter Season 4, but few believed he stood a chance against the reigning welterweight champion. GSP had won 13 of his first 14 UFC fights and looked completely untouchable. On paper, it wasn't even supposed to be competitive, but when the fight started, Serra came out swinging, fearless, aggressive, and relentless. He then stunned GSP with a right hand that changed everything, then swarmed him with punches, dropping the champion multiple times before finishing the fight with a barrage of strikes on the ground. In just one round, Matt Serra pulled off one of the biggest upsets in UFC history, shocking the world and handing Georges St-Pierre one of the most stunning losses of his legendary career. 1. Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey. But at number 1 is what is by far the biggest upset in UFC history. Back in 2015 at UFC 193, Holly Holm stepped up to challenge Ronda Rousey, though for most people, it wasn't seen as a real threat. At the time, Rousey wasn't just dominant, she was the face of the UFC, the biggest female name in all sports, and a global icon. She had defended her title 7 times, finishing opponents in seconds and making world-class fighters look helpless. Holm, a former boxing champion, was solid but viewed as just another name on Rousey's highlight reel. In fact, she entered the fight as a 14-1 underdog. But all that changed the moment the fight began. In front of a record-breaking crowd of over 56,000 fans, Holm stayed composed, using her footwork and timing to pick Rousey apart. Then in the second round, she landed a thunderous head kick that sent the champion crashing to the canvas. Moments later, the referee waved it off, marking the end of one of the most dominant title reigns in UFC history. And there you have it, 7 of the biggest title fights upsets in UFC history that absolutely nobody saw coming. Which one's your favorite? Let me know down in the comments, and as always, don't forget to like the video and smash that subscribe button for more UFC videos like this.